I'm sure most of you felt we needed to speak a little longer to Reverend Frank Shikani. Fortunately, we have someone else that joined in on the Solidarity visit to Palestine in Bethlehem over the Christmas weekend. We speak to the Dean of the St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, Mr. Michael Weirder. Welcome and good morning to the welcome to the program and good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Najwa, and to your listeners.
Well, we were, and no matter how many times one hears the stories come out of, occupied Palestine and your visit to Bethlehem in Jerusalem now, it just always is stomach churning, gives us goosebumps, and we feel totally, totally helpless sitting on the side of the world, not being able to do much. But of course, hearing from eyewitnesses like yourself on what you've seen and what it is that we need to do to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. What was your experience like? May I call you Michael?
Yeah, that's fine. So we
Hmm.
God knows me. I hope.
Hello, yes. So, what was your experience like? Can you please take us through what you saw? And we do know what the purpose of the visit was. We can talk about that as well. But can you please take us through what you witnessed?
You know, what I did witness was just the incredible kindness of everybody we met
Uh
across
huh.
the board, from Muslim to Christian, and even people who profess no religious adherence, but just the humanity and the affection with which they embraced us. In that one witness, our people proclaimed that they felt very isolated, as if the world did not care.
Mm-hmm.
And person after person that we met repeated the same question: "Thank you for being with us." And that for us and for them of it was an expression of love in its physicality, just by being present.
Mm-hmm. Right. And in terms of your experience on a very poignant visit during the Christmas period in Bethlehem, um, what was that? Um, what sense did you get out of that? In terms of the genocide. I'm not going to call it a war.
Yeah, no. In fact, one of an ex-Palestinian prisoner that we met on the first night that we arrived in Bethlehem, he said there needs to be a stronger word than genocide, because it's not just about the physical extermination of people, but when you go into an ancient city such as Gaza, then you're also, and the way they strategically targeted libraries and institutions that have managed to archive centuries of civilization. So you are intent on it's the erasure of memory. That was the words of a young poet that we met in Jerusalem, and others that we met in Bethlehem. It was an awareness of a total commitment on the side of the Zionists to destroy history and how it's remembered and how it enables people to live with dignity and with some of the joy of being alive.
Hmm. And in terms of the church, and of course, there were no celebrations in Bethlehem. However, there was the prayers. Can you give us a sense of what that was like in the church?
You know, where we lived in Bethlehem, we were about maybe 500 meters away from what they call the manger square. So you have all marks of history. On the one hand, on the one side, there is a Church of the Nativity, where traditionally we believe is where the grotto or the cave in which the Christ child was born. And
Hmm.
then on the other side, as you step out to your right, there is what had been during the British occupation, had been a police station and consequently the Zionists. And when Yasser Arafat came, converted and created a peace center. So for me, the proximity of the peace center And when you go out there again, you look to your right, there's a municipal building of the Bethlehem municipality. And there's
Mm,
a banner that says, um, Palestine gave us Jesus, our liberator. Please give Palestine justice and peace. Just the reminder that if there was no Bethlehem, there wouldn't be any Christianity because it's the founding marker of our
mm,
Christian faith. And to be there right in the geography, in the social, physical space where
mm.
prophets walk and
Yes.
have held people accountable to basic beliefs of dignity, of justice, and of kindness, of how we are interrelated. For me, was a magnificent honor and a privilege to be part of it, and also a life of farming and enriching. I'm not the same person that I was before I went there.
Why?
Just seeing how, just so, our first morning going down the side of the street, heading towards Manger Square, and young children are going up the hill towards their school. I passed three, they could have been girls about 8 years old, and the one smiled at me and she asked me, "What's your name?" I said, "Michael," and "What's yours?" And she gave me her name, and the other two refrained their names and so forth. But it was just a loving confidence that spoke to our children, just felt very secure and safe within a context of the repeated reminder of danger of death. And
Mm,
nobody in Bethlehem was unaffected by either the news of it, but the reality that they have relatives, close ones on that side, just an hour and a half away is car journey from Bethlehem. And so just the way people went about the daily business of making a living, of living, but in a way of such welcoming dignity. I'll
right.
never forget that.
Indeed. And thank you for sharing that with us. We're just learning so much from these people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
They just gifted in some ways and protected in so many ways, of course. Um, I see, I've read a little bit about your work, and you've received hate messages after your pro-Palestine stance.
Could you rephrase your question, Najma, please?
Can you tell us about the hate messages you've received
Oh,
regarding
hate
your
messages.
pro-Palestine, yes, your pro-Palestine stance?
Look, that was way back in just after the 7th of October, uh, the Hamas initiative, and then the response, and then people focus on Hamas and not what predates that history of occupation and violent belligerence on the part of the Zionists. And I found that Christians, I'm not talking about the community of Cape Town, Christians who have a very reduced understanding of history and of our Christian faith have
Mm-hmm.
been critical, in the most judgmental. My priesthood was questioned, my understanding of our faith. Um, it revealed a very passive and an overt hostility towards Islam
Mm-hmm.
because the understanding of what people expressed towards me was a uncritical bias
Mm-hmm.
towards Zionism and collapsing Zionism and Judaism into one narrative.
Mm,
And when one counters the narrative, you're also countering their particular, uh, almost they incarcerated. They are jailed by their own opinions. And when you dare to stand in the name of our Creator and say, this is where God wants us to stand on the right side of history, people were very offended
mm,
and to the point of being uh, most belligerent and rude
mm,
about their views.
mhm. How do you respond to that?
You know, we can't allow people that are seduced by evil to be our teachers. So my first response is, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. I invite people for a cup of tea. I'd even come where they are. They don't have to come to the cathedral. And
Mm-hmm.
most people, in fact, nobody has ever accepted my invitation to sit down and converse. But
Mm.
the reality, Najwa, is when people are locked in their emotions, they actually don't want to hear factual opinions. They want to live within a narrow ideology that makes them feel good about how they don't relate to others who have a different opinion, whether it be religious, politically, or just on a personal level. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, I've sought out the goodness of people who share the view, who respond in a similar way to how I believe and how we believe God wants us to be a loving and a kind presence within the world, and not to be uh, lectured or respond in a way of ones who are so rude and offensive.
Mm-hmm. What do you plan on doing post your visit now as a South African and a leader of a church?
But since, a lot of Christianity is based on what is written in what people call the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
And I've become more and more committed. And what the script has done is the geography of where Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan, and just
Mm.
the terrain in which he worked and lived in that 3 years of his public ministry has alerted me of revisiting scriptures and how to make it more accessible to younger generations, and to teach them and enable them to have a different view of the land that we call holy. Why is it called holy land? And why is holiness so contested by evil? That's where Satan rules and
Mm.
has its own kingdom. So we have to be intensely subversive to education and education and education. That thing that we called in the 80s conscientization.
Mm-hmm.
We need to revisit and upgrade our approach to reaching out to the young. Where we can reach their parents and their grandparents, it's wonderful. But we need to, there's a tradition in Cape Town where activists in the 1940s, when you teach a child, you touch the future. And
Yes,
I really believe in that. And I've been born again into that and that worldview. The young will lead us.
indeed. And guided by people like yourself, we can look forward to maybe a much better future for them. Let's hope that the world is free of violence and we can all talk together in peace and harmony, live in peace and harmony, and of course, dialogue, uh, which is what we would like. But unfortunately, we do have the reality of the sufferings of all of the oppressed people in the world, and especially now as we are focused mainly on the occupied Palestine and, of course, the Gaza Strip. Thank you so much, Dean Michael Weirder, for your time this morning, and all the best.
Thank you. And salam alaikum to everybody for the rest of the day.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much. Right after the break, we catch up with Abdul Alim. We're talking about the an update on the Gaza. All right, and as if you have any comments on what our guests had to say, especially the Christian delegation that was out in Bethlehem over the Christmas weekend, their views and their observations and what they've come back with, I think is extremely important for us to focus on. So and reflect on, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about it. And it was, I'm sure you'll agree, very very interesting to have a Christian perspective and to change the narrative on just Muslims talking about how Muslims are suffering in that land, in the holy lands, as he pointed out. And we've saying it over and over, it's a humanitarian crisis, and that's what our focus is on, and we will continue to talk about that. And then, as I said, we will be catching up with Abdul Alim. um, we need to know what um, they are doing in terms of the emergency operations and whether the aid is actually going through. So we get an update from him live in a moment.